There are quite a few countries that don't even have militaries, so it's nice to see that some are giving it a try. If various armies are able to get past some geographical boundaries of these countries, unless they put up a really good fight, they likely won't make it without the help from allies if World War III finally comes. While some of these countries have spent a large amount of money on their military with no noticeable victories, sometimes it just seems like they need a little bit better leadership. Whether it's unwise military decisions throughout history, to armies that are the most corrupt, here are the worst militaries. But first, we'd like to give a quick shout out to Jake Birks for leaving us this comment in our Insane Attack Helicopters video. Let us know which militaries you think we left off this list, and maybe we'll feature you in an upcoming video. Number 10. Afghanistan. When your country is full of terrorists, you know you got a military problem. The inability to keep the Taliban in check has basically turned the country into a Sharia law state. The country is currently trying to rebuild their military and also their capital city after relentless bombing raids and suicide bombs. They've also had to deal with warlords who became rich from exporting narcotics across the country. The country possesses 0 fighter aircraft and only 4 attack helicopters, which could all probably get shot down pretty easily with an RPG. Being a landlocked country, they have no navy, virtually no allies, and the NYPD could probably beat the Afghan army. But since they're receiving billions of dollars of help from the US, they shouldn't be on this list for too long. Number 9. Saudi Arabia. Similar to the dating world, just because you have a lot of money doesn't always mean you're gonna get a girlfriend. Just because Saudi Arabia is an extremely rich country doesn't mean they're gonna have a strong military. They've been trying for a long time to put an end to the rebellion in Yemen with all of our support and much of our equipment, but still can't pull it off. Yemen is a close ally with Saudi Arabia, so any kind of revolution would seem like an act against them. The revolutionists are basically peasant farmers who are getting a hold of weapons, while the Saudi Arabian military leaders have little to no battle experience and are getting owned. Despite the US and the UK supplying fighter aircraft like the Eurofighter Typhoon and the F-15, no one seemed to know how to use all that firepower to their advantage. They also lack pilots and training. It's been a very costly fight for them and the Americans, which helps them get this spot on our list. Sometimes the cause of the fight is stronger than the enemy. Number 8. Tajikistan. The country of Tajikistan is found in Central Asia, where it borders with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, China, and Afghanistan. Many of you have probably not heard of the Tajikistan people and their struggle. In the past, they've relied heavily on Russia to keep their borders secured and a military that would be strong enough to hold the fight until reinforcements from the north can arrive. The country is patrolled with Russian aircraft and comprised of a total of 800 troops. Meanwhile, their entire military consists of only 14,000 people. No need to worry too much though, since this is the home of the 201st Russian military base, which houses an extra 7,500 of some of Russia's toughest soldiers. Number 7. Mongolia. If a battle were ever to break out between the powerhouses of Russia and China, the whole country of Mongolia would basically become a battlefield. Hopefully the Mongolians can try to keep the peace. They're not using horses anymore, but they might as well be. Many would also believe that since Mongolia is a landlocked country, that it wouldn't really need to possess a navy of any kind. At one point in time, the Soviets found a strategic importance for having a fleet at Lake Kuvskoy. This lake is about the same size of Rhode Island, and they would basically transport oil from the north with company of a small fleet. The Mongolian Navy consists of 7 men, and only one of them knows how to swim. It's recently been privatized and left to fend for itself. Not something you really want to mess with. Number 6. The Filipino military. In recent years, it's been China's goal to beef up their military presence, especially in the South China Sea, where these islands are located. China is building islands here on international waters at an exponential rate, and there seems to be no end in sight. The US Navy and rival Filipino counterparts dispute these practices as being aggressive and unnecessary. There really doesn't seem like there's much the Filipino military can do about it because of their outdated navy. This consists of 4 frigates, 35 patrol vessels, and 10 corvettes, which isn't nearly as strong as it should be. Many of the ships are just retired American Coast Guard vessels and wouldn't stand a chance. China is adding more and more territory close to the Filipino shoreline. Recently, they've also had issues with terrorism and organized crime, which has led to some restlessness. Luckily, there's US military bases in case they do get invaded. Number 5. Nigeria. Nigeria is an oil-rich country with a military that isn't strong enough to defend their vast supplies. It has difficulty monitoring dangerous individuals, which has even led to members joining for the wrong cause. Many will apply for monetary incentives and become easily corruptible. Although there's a decent amount of Nigerian soldiers of 181,000 personnel, it's difficult to tell how many of them are loyal. The outdated equipment would also put them at least a few decades behind stronger nations, and officers will complain of an overall lack of supplies to fight the radical Boko Haram, who basically is doing what they want. Violence has struck the area, which means big differences between the North and the South economically and religiously. Number 4. Mexico. Another army which can't seem to get their act together is the Mexican army, who is notoriously corrupt. The gruesome crimes committed by cartel members have scared away all military and police presence in some areas. Some feel as though the level of crime in Mexico is underreported, with more fatalities between the criminals and police or army than American conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. The military was called in September of 2018 in the city of Acapulco. They were suspicious on counts of murder and corruption here in the city, and 700 total cops were arrested. In 2017, 31,000 plus murders took place in Mexico, with 953 of them coming from Acapulco. If the military soon doesn't win the fight here, it's only a matter of time when the country gets ruled by gangs. The Knights Templar cartel was in control of a state until vigilantes had to step in and do what the military couldn't. Other countries in Central America deal with similar problems as Mexico and can easily make it on this list. Number 3. Somalia. Not being able to protect their coastlines, the shores of Somalia have become a toxic waste dump and a haven for pirates. This is what happens when you don't spend money on your navy. The Somali coast has been home to a horrific number of illegal radioactive waste dumpings, especially by organized crime syndicates. For decades, Western companies have been dumping without regulation along this coastline, mostly due to the lack of government stability in the area. Here in this photo, we see two people attempting to contain a rusting barrel of supposed nuclear waste, which gives you an idea of how hard it is to put an end to this ongoing problem. Number 2. Canada. Good luck getting north of the border without passing through customs first. The borders are well guarded with moose-mounted armed patrol moose agents. The gun isn't even the most dangerous thing about this photo. Check out the horns on that thing. Not only that, but the silencer on the gun will keep it from causing the moose to run out of control. Although Canada has gotten a little bit of help from the US throughout years, it seems Canada will have to make our list for one of the worst failed invasion attempts during the Second Global Conflict. The Canadians led the raid of Dieppe in northern France, similar to our D-Day invasion, only to get mowed down by German machine guns. Out of roughly 5,000 Canadian troops who made it to the shores that day, only 2,200 were able to make it back to Great Britain. We should also mention that hunting rifles were used by Canadian forces during the First Global Conflict, which were essentially useless. And number 1, but first, here's a list of countries who have no military at all and basically rely on foreign armies to come to their aid in case of an invasion. This includes Costa Rica, Monaco, Panama, Vanuatu, Iceland, the Marshall Islands, and Samoa, to name a few. We'd also like to hear what you think the biggest failed military invasion in history was, and maybe we'll feature some of your comments in an upcoming video. Number 1. Bhutan. If this video was about spirituality, Bhutan could also make number 1 with many Buddhist monasteries and temples. Bhutan would never harm a fly in fear of karma coming back to haunt them, with a standing army of only 2,500 people. They're also one of the least corrupt countries in the world recently, and they run entirely off of hydroelectric power. Home to many mountains, it's difficult to maintain a large population, ranking 165th in that category. Bhutan has remained a very peaceful country and has never actually been invaded by another foreign country. This gives them a very unique sense of identity despite them being situated between the large countries of India and China. They've remained under protection by the Indian Army in case some other power decided to invade them. Buddhism was introduced to the area from Mongolians and it's gained tourism from tourists visiting historical monuments. So what do you guys think was the most interesting? Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and maybe we'll feature you in an upcoming video.